And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Ms. Jennifer Miles.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today for our program. We really hope that you all find this educational, something that is going to be enjoyable for you. And throughout the course of the program, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. Alana has been gracious enough where she's going to be moderating that, keeping us on track together as a group, and also ensuring that any questions that you may have throughout the course of the presentation, we're able to take care of answering those for you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Our presentation today is about vitamins, mineral supplements, and sort of giving an overview of how they can help with certain chronic conditions, things that you may commonly hear about on TV or may have spoken to with family, friends, medical professionals that are part of your care team, and sort of helping to clear up a little bit of the confusion and help create a roadmap, if you will, onto how to use the products. We're going to talk a little bit today about some health topics that are very commonplace as we get older, how they affect our overall health. Talk about a little bit of the information regarding supplements that you may frequently hear about for these particular health conditions. And then most importantly, that many of us will pay attention to, looking at any kind of side effects or things that we need to be careful of whenever we have these particular products that we're using, and just being mindful of ensuring that we're getting the right benefits, the right products, and trying to minimize any sorts of additional health concerns to ourselves. I always have to start off with this, just a little bit of a disclaimer. I am a pharmacist that works with Baptist, as I'll talk about in just a moment. So, I always appreciate, you'll often hear that pharmacists, nurses, we're among those folks on the healthcare team that often patients, whether they're directly in our care or, when people meet us socially, will often put a lot of confidence into the things that we say, and we appreciate that as healthcare professionals. This is intended really to be something informational, and to a point also, of course, for entertainment purposes too, that you're going to get some great information from this. But if there's anything specific to your particular health condition, I always like to advise patients to make sure that they talk to, whether it's their physician or someone else that's caring for them in the doctor's office, like a physician assistant or nurse practitioner. They're going to know things about you specifically that I'm not necessarily going to be aware of, or may not be in a really great position to be able to answer. So if there's anything at all that's presented here today, while, definitely, again, I appreciate that patients put a lot of support into the things that we as pharmacists tell them, always make sure to go back and for your specific case, just double check that with your healthcare team. And then in terms of any disclosures, I only work for Baptist. I don't really have any connections per se with any other organizations, or pharmaceutical companies. So everything that's going to be presented today is based on scientific literature that's out there, nothing, branded for any particular companies, though you may see, pictures of specific brands, just as an example when we're going through the various parts of the presentation. So you're here with me and the team, which I appreciate. Thank you very much. So who am I? I'm a pharmacist with Baptist. Like I mentioned, I joined Baptist back in 2015. I've actually been working in pharmacy for altogether going on 18 years now. I spent a good portion of that time as a tech working in retail pharmacy, and then also as a student. I'm coming up on, this is actually a little out of date, 10 years as a pharmacist, working still, again, in retail, working at hospitals. I've done some research as well in my past. And then right now, I'm working in doctor's offices. So for any of you that are patients at some of our primary care offices or our cardiologist office, you may actually literally see me in person because I work there right now, seeing patients in the offices, and also do a little bit of administrative work as well, looking at data and helping make certain decisions about medications and things that we're doing within Baptist. So it's been really great joining the team here. I often do these presentations as well, working with the team at Community Health. So again, we're really excited that you're here today in this format with us, doing this presentation through the COVID-19. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Some of the health issues that we look at as we age. So generally speaking, there are a lot of conditions that as we get older, there's going to be a likelihood that we will have at some point in our life. And some of these things will include heart disease, which as of 2013, as you see here, leading cause of death, unfortunately, among folks, whether male or female patients in the United States. Obesity is another big one that we are having a lot of issues with across all age groups. Unfortunately, we're seeing even with kids at younger and younger ages getting into obesity and morbid obesity categories where we're having to be mindful of the things that we're eating, our level of activity, and certain things we're exposing ourselves to in our daily life. In particular, you'll see that with a lot of the advertising that goes into that, women in particular, we tend to be, as a demographic, a big group that is targeted for a lot of the direct-to-consumer advertising that happens. And there's a lot of supplements out there that will look at that particular condition as the market that they will often go after. In particular here, when you have nearly 40% of women over the age of 20, that's a big group that a lot of companies will like to try and offer their services, if you will, to. Osteoporosis is another big one that we take a look at as we continue to get older. And again, as women, we tend to be the big demographic where a lot of that is targeted to, though we have been paying a lot more attention to our male counterparts and the effects that has on them as well. Men do, after a certain age, catch up with women in terms of their risk of bone fractures. So we're actually going to talk about that a little bit in today's presentation. Menopause and BPH, these are things that in terms of reproductive health become more and more of an issue around the ages of about 50, 55-ish for both genders. So we'll look a little bit today at some of the products that are used for that. And then sexual health, a concern at any age. There are, again, products that you may hear about as you go to the pharmacy, as you watch TV or read certain magazines, that again will make claims that they will provide certain services or effects for patients to be able to counteract some of those concerns that they have. We'll touch a little bit today on some products that you'll see out in the community, and again, some of the things that we need to be mindful of for that. So the first topic we'll talk about is cardiovascular health. So like I mentioned, it's still the leading cause of death. You'll hear this come up a bit now if you watch the news, again, as they make comparisons with the current situation with the coronavirus pandemic and how it fares in terms of its effect in mortality compared to other conditions. Heart disease is still considered a big issue. And unfortunately, again, as you'll be hearing in the news recently, there's impacts with coronavirus to the cardiovascular system with clots and things like that. So this is an area that we're going to continue to kind of look at. But in general, removing the current concerns with the pandemic, heart disease is something that kills 1 in 4 men and women as of 2009 here in the United States. Unfortunately, a lot of it tends to be sudden cardiac death or events in general, particularly in men. But we are seeing more and more in these last couple of decades that female patients are having a lot more concerns with this, especially because a lot of the symptoms in women tend to be atypical, meaning that there are certain sets of symptoms that, and you'll hear this from your doctors, that you should look out for: the radiating pain down your arm, chest pain, of course, being a big one, jaw pain. Women may present with some of these symptoms, as well as we may not. So because this tends to be a big silent killer here in the United States, we have a lot of products that you go to the pharmacy to purchase: blood pressure medications, cholesterol therapy. But there are side effects associated with many of those. We see them commonly in the cardiac offices where I work. And these medications are very good. They have a place in treating patients, and we try to work with our patients as much as possible to minimize any concerns they have with that. There are patients that will prefer to go the natural route and take supplements to address some of those symptoms. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these products in just a couple of minutes, and that they do not replace the pharmaceutical products that your doctor will often provide to you. Those medications, again, your blood pressure medication, your statin therapies like your Lipitor, Crestor, there's, good reasons to be on these products. But if you choose to go the route of the supplements, more natural products, some things to look out for. So on this current slide, you'll see here on the screen, we're looking a little bit at some of the risk factors for patients developing heart disease. Diabetes is by far the biggest one. We are making a big push now in the medical community, especially in diabetic patients, where once we realize that a person is either pre-diabetic or fully diabetic, that we make sure that we wrap the correct resources around them in terms of not just addressing the blood sugar for the sake of the diabetes itself, but also diabetes creates a lot of other impacts to other parts of your body. And your cardiac is one of the biggest systems that we worry about, cardiac and vascular effects of diabetes. Certainly all of these other areas like your weight, your overall diet, activity level, as you look down the list here, absolutely have an impact. And of course, that last point there about hormone level changes, they think is a big part of the reason why with female patients, there are a lot of silent issues that go on as women go through various phases of their life in their 30s and 40s and have hormone fluctuations. A shameless plug for community health, we have a big program that's being created around diabetes. So if any of you folks on the line have diabetes currently or have been told recently that you're at risk for diabetes, we've got great programs taught by experts, nurses, dietitians across the health system that are trained and have certain special certifications to be able to provide education. A lot of diabetes seems really overwhelming, but because it has so many of these far-reaching effects, especially on your cardiovascular system, if you have the opportunity in your schedule to join any of those programs, really great information about diet and lifestyle changes you can make, and also education about the medications that you might have to take. There's a lot of research that we're looking at right now where we're actually finding that diabetic medications have some positive effects on your cardiovascular system. So if you see a cardiologist or primary care doctor, they may talk to you about it. And then certainly in a lot of the programs we offer here in Baptist, we are trying to embed that into the programs to educate our patients on. So in terms of specifically now the cardiovascular aspect of things, a lot of patients are familiar with using aspirin as over-the-counter. It's good for your heart and, keeping your blood thinned out, particularly if you're a diabetic with heart disease. But beyond that, you'll hear a lot about other quote-unquote heart-healthy supplements that will often be on the television and advertisements about the effects, the benefits that they provide to your heart. And so I've outlined a few of them here. I'm going to provide a little bit more detail on some of these and some of the things that you may hear in your advertisements on the television or in magazines, and whether there is validity to a lot of the claims or not, and then things that you should be looking for in terms of if you're on prescription medication, which again, cannot stress enough, while we absolutely know that there's good benefits to natural products, if you're at a certain point in your health condition and have to take prescription medications, definitely we encourage that. And if you want to take supplements, that's no problem too, just to make sure that there are certain things to be mindful of when we're going to be doing that and mixing any of these products with prescription medications. So the first big one are fiber supplements. So a lot of folks may see commercials on the television about things like eating oatmeal, for instance, or grains in general and the benefits that it has on your heart. And that is actually very true. A lot of what you may see in like your Quaker Oats or those Irish steel cut oats commercials that come on, fiber has been found to have some really great benefits. The overall effect is that it helps by decreasing the amount of cholesterol that your body is absorbing in your digestive tract. So when you eat oatmeal or other types of high fiber containing grains or products, you are helping your body to prevent basically the absorption of cholesterol by using those fiber components to the foods you're eating as a buffer, if you will. So it stops the movement, the absorption of a lot of the fats from the foods that we eat across your digestive tract. You'll notice a trend as we go through these slides. We understand that they're supplements and that they're great. So you'll see on the right side, I'll do things like the commercialized products like your Metamucil, your Benefiber. But I'm also a big believer, and we have a really great relationship where we work pharmacy and nursing with our dietary team. The foods that we eat also provide a lot of these, natural benefits as well. So on the left side of my slides here, you'll always see that I reference naturally occurring sources of these particular products and things that you can just eat to get some of that benefit. And of course, if you feel it appropriate, you can also do the prepared supplements as well. So fiber can be found in certain types of vegetables. Beans are a big source of them. Fruits, when you eat them whole, are also a great source of fiber. We lose a little bit of that as we do things like making smoothies or other type of pureed forms, but eating whole fruits actually does provide a good source of fiber. And then, of course, our grains, like in whole grain products, breads, your pastas, things like that. And again, of course, things like oatmeal. You want to be mindful, again, especially if you're one of those patients that has both heart and diabetic concerns, of the amounts of like carbs and things that you're consuming. So again, this is a good source, but to try and work with a member of your medical team to ensure that it's something that's good for you. Metamucil, Benefiber, Consul, and then generally what you'll hear referred to as psyllium products. These are also more kind of industrialized versions, the supplements that you will often hear about that you can take to provide you a source of fiber in your diet. So something important to kind of keep in mind with fiber, it does have great benefits. And again, the reason being it works in your digestive tract to block the absorption of the fats and the cholesterol at its most basic function that we're eating. You want to make sure, and especially because we live here in South Florida, that you properly hydrate yourself. This is really key, because the example I typically give with this is that you can think of eating a lot of fiber and the effects that it has on your GI tract as like taking a bag of sand and pouring it down a drain like your sink in your kitchen. It'll continue to accept it. The pipes, are so long and they'll accept the sand. But if you do that and don't run the water over time, what'll end up happening? The sand will eventually back up in your pipes and you're not going to be able to get anything past it. And in fact, it'll cause your kitchen sink to flood. Same principle here if you're taking fiber, especially if you're doing things like Metamucil or Consul, which if you've ever seen them, it literally looks like sand. If you do that and you take them, and yes, you are supposed to mix them with water, but a lot of folks will underestimate, unfortunately, has been our experience, the amount of water, and you'll end up causing yourself to get dehydrated, and it can cause constipation. So we definitely want to make sure that if it recommends that you take the product itself in an 8-ounce glass of water, definitely try to make sure you do that. And try to keep yourself hydrated. If you know you're going to be outside doing any outdoor activities, or especially now we're creeping back up into the 80s and 90s with our temperature here, we lose a lot of body water and don't notice it. Make sure that you drink plenty of water as much as you're able to keep your system flushed and make sure you don't end up backing up any of that fiber in your system. You also want to be mindful if you take certain prescription medications. A big one with this that's a common example is Synthroid. We have patients that may have low thyroid or alterations in their thyroid levels that will have to be on certain thyroid supplements, Synthroid or levothyroxine being a common one. You have to be careful about the timing of certain medications that are very sensitive to absorption when you're taking fiber supplements. We usually recommend, if you can do, about a 2 to 4 hour spacing between things like Synthroid or certain other types of medications that really are sensitive to those absorptions from your digestive system into the rest of your body. And blood pressure medications is another big class of medicine that you don't want to take them too close to a fiber supplement. It can also decrease your blood sugar. So you just want to make sure, if you're a diabetic again, and you check your blood glucose at home with finger sticks, just keep an eye on them and see if there's any changes, and talk to your doctor. If you're on certain types of medication, insulin is a big one, and you start noticing that your blood sugar is dropping really low, just keep an eye on that as you make any changes with your fiber intake. And I mentioned already the GI issues. Again, that's kind of tied to the hydration. We just want to make sure that you remain properly hydrated when you're taking that product. Essential fatty acids is the next one. The way that most of us are more commonly accustomed to hearing about this product or this group of products is fish oil. So these are basically products that you're absorbing into your system that will help you with another part of your cholesterol called your triglycerides. So your triglycerides are a big part of that fatty component that floats around in your blood, basically. You'll often see it when you go to get what's called a lipid panel. Your primary care doctor or cardiologist may order it to see what your cholesterol is like. There's different components to it. So the one that looks at that circulating fat in the system, your triglycerides, can be positively impacted by the use of fatty acids. There's two different types. There's ALA and LA. Basically with these, they work in different ways, but their overall goal is to try and help your body when you consume them in the appropriate quantity in reducing those circulating fats, if you will, in your system. Like I mentioned, you'll see them naturally in certain products. Seeds and nuts tend to be good sources of this. The one, again, that we hear most commonly about as consumers is fish products or things that are coming from the sea in general. So if not fish, then what's referred to as algal oils. So things that are marine in nature, like marine plants, basically have sources of these complex fatty acids. You can get them as supplements in things like flaxseed oil and certain other types of nut oils that are sold. And then fish oil supplements are the biggest one. So you'll see that omega-3, 6, and 9, which refer to the way that those fatty acids, the chains and the chemistry of them work. You'll see them in things like krill oil supplements. So most of the ones that we get as consumers tend to more prominently be fish oil derivatives. And then more recently, you'll see flaxseed oil or flax oil as another one. So at the end of the day, the overall role of this is to try and help control that triglyceride. One of the big things, and with many of our cardiologists, they like to try and put patients on the prescription products as much as possible. A big part of the reason for this is the brand and the purity. With a lot of what's happened, environmentally with mercury and things like that being in our waterways, a lot of the fish that we would normally get these oils from, there can be some concerns on, how that will impact your system, for one, and then two, just the general purity overall of the product. When you get them by prescription, and so there are products like Lovaza or Vasipa, for some of the folks on the line, if you're taking those products, those are prescription forms of these fish oils or these fatty acids that your doctor may give you if they've looked at your labs and they see that your triglyceride levels are high. When you do it by prescription, there's regulations in terms of, inspectors go to the companies that make these products. They take a look at their batches and say, okay, this looks consistent. You're following the manufacturing processes that we would like. And so there's a level of confidence that every time you get a bottle of Lovaza or Vasipa, for instance, when it tells you there is, for the sake of argument, 1,000 milligrams of the fish oil in each of those capsules, you know that that's, very highly true because there's folks that are overlooking the making of those products. When you're buying the supplements over the counter, and especially if you go from maybe your Walgreens or CVS had a sale on Nature's Made when you went to buy these back in January, so you bought their product, and then, a few months later, you finished your bottle, and then you've gone back in and they have a sale now on the CVS brand or another national brand, and you buy that product instead. We can't verify how consistent that 1,000 milligrams of fish oil may be between the Nature's Made or the Kirkland brand or, the Nature's Bounty brand. There's not really always a guarantee that when you go from one brand to the other, that purity and the quantity, the strength of the medicine is always consistent. The other thing that tends to be confusing for a lot of patients is all the different formulations of these medications or these, supplements. It'll say omega-3 and then omega-3 and 6 and then with ALA and with DHA and EPA. And it's like, well, what's the concern here? Which one do I take? And a lot of that is going to be a discussion with your primary care doctor, or if you see a cardiologist, a lot of them subspecialize into cholesterol and would understand and can sit down and talk to you and say, well, based on your labs and what we see happening, you really need more of this particular type of fatty acid than this other one. So this tends to be a conversation that we as pharmacists can provide some level of guidance on. But again, having all of those pieces in place, your cardiologist is likely going to be the one, or your PCP, to be able to provide that guidance. There's also some concerns, again, around GI issues and clotting in terms of side effects. You can have that kind of burping, that anchovy taste. When you take some of these over-the-counter ones especially, you may get it to an extent if you were to take the prescription, but definitely with the over-the-counter versions, the supplements that you'll get from certain companies, patients tend to have that kind of aftertaste effect. So you just want to be mindful of that. That is something that happens a lot. Patients will also say that it causes them to go to the bathroom more or less depending on how much they're taking. So all of these are things that you would want to monitor for. And if they become unpleasant, that you don't feel that you can tolerate them, might be a good time again to bring it up to your doctor. And they may tell you to cut back, to change brands, or if you need to be on a prescription version, can provide that for you. Here I do a little overview of a bunch of different products. So this is what I was mentioning, where you'll see some, common things that you're accustomed to. The Cholesterol brand, or product, from Nature's Made, niacin. So there's a lot of products out there that, have some cardiac benefits that we just want to be mindful of. CoQ10 or coenzyme Q10. A lot of patients, especially if you've been on statins from back in the 80s or 90s, when a lot of those products first came to the market, will have some familiarity with this. A lot of patients, when they take statins, if they get those muscle pains, will often be encouraged to take coenzyme Q10 to decrease the effects of those pains from the statins. The important thing to know is coenzyme Q10 is actually made in our body naturally. It's all over in your tissues. So while taking the supplement is not bad in terms of, overall effect, really your body already has a certain level of this in itself. And there have been studies that have gone on for several years, including one that, the team I work with at the cardiology office recently reviewed within the last couple of weeks, that really question whether coenzyme Q10 has any benefits. There's really a lot of thought that maybe it doesn't actually help as much with any pains or anything like that you may experience from statins. And so if you do encounter this, instead of buying the CoQ10, talk to the cardiologist, and there may be things, or your PCP, that can be done in order to help decrease those pains that you're having without adding another pill, even if that pill is something over the counter. Garlic tablets are believed to have some impact on your blood pressure by bringing it down and also slowing the development of plaques. There's not a lot of conclusive evidence from a lot of the studies that we've seen over the last several years that say that definitively does happen. There are patients that eat garlic on their foods or take supplements like garlic or the general garlic supplements that will be sold at stores. They may swear by it, and, that's fine. We don't have a lot of information, unfortunately, to say, yes, that emphatically is the case or not. So, again, if you're on blood pressure medication, probably, advisable to try and continue to take it. And then from there, if you're taking a garlic supplement of any kind, to just let your healthcare team know, so that's something that they can keep an eye on. Green tea extract is another one, thought to have some benefits to your cholesterol, specifically your bad cholesterol or your LDL, that it may help to lower it. And then for the good cholesterol, the HDL, that it may increase it a bit. Again, green tea has a lot of concerns when you take it as a supplement, the extract of the tea itself. So a little bit different than drinking it. The supplement tends to be a very concentrated form. And we've actually seen where patients may take it to help with their cholesterol, it can have an impact on your blood vessels and can cause them to constrict it in such a way, depending on the concentration of the green tea that you're taking, where it can cause your blood pressure to shoot up. It's found commonly not just in medicine for your cardiovascular system, but also in a lot of weight loss products as well. So we talked a little bit about obesity in the opening slide as being, something that we look at a lot here in the United States. You want to be mindful if you're taking a green tea extract for any reason that we've not seen anything proven for the benefits that it's said to have with either weight loss or lowering cholesterol. And also we do see a definite correlation in it having some bad effects by increasing the blood pressure. So we just want to be careful of that. Niacin or vitamin B3 is believed to help with your good cholesterol. So with this, it's actually found naturally occurring in yeast. So in certain types of bread, you'll often see niacin listed if you look at the vitamins and the nutrition label on your bread, in certain types of meats and other things that are protein sources like eggs, for instance, and certain types of greens as well as whole grains. If you want to take it as a supplement, it's available as flow niacin and certain other types of niacin, supplements over the counter. This, much like